ado, thank you.
Thank you.
Jean, did we do a mic check for you?
I am here loud and clear. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you.
You bet.
Good afternoon, Jillian, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome, Maretta. Would you like to do a mic check?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Loud and clear, thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Lee, I see you coming in and out. Do you want to test your mic once again?
Yeah, let's try again. Do I sound okay right now?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Good afternoon, Bruce. Would you like to do a mic check?
Okay, so I think we're good here, Daniel. I got the document open up fine, second time, so that worked. And we're ready to rock and roll in 30 seconds.
Your clerk today is going to be Colin.
Recording in progress.
Okay, look like I have 2 p.m. Right now. And let's see, real quick, do we have Supervisor Chavez?
Yes, I'm here, Autumn.
Oh, okay, good, perfect. Hi, Cindy, thank you. All right, if that's the case, let's call to order. Welcome, everybody. I would like to go ahead and call the FGOC committee meeting to order at this time. I am Supervisor Otto Lee. I'm honored to chair the Finance Government Operations Committee, along with my Vice Chair, Supervisor Cindy Chavez today. With both supervisors present, we have a quorum. As you may have noticed, we have also scheduled 2 FGOC meetings this month. mainly to try to take on some of the audits that needs our attention. We will continue to monitor the length of the meeting to make sure that the audits as well as all the departments' reports are received, the attention is needed. And that takes us to the first item of our agenda, which is public comments. This item is reserved for members of the public to address the committee on any item not on this agenda. Any public would wish to address the committee on items not on the agenda should request to speak at this time. Speakers are limited to following: 3 minutes if there are 5 or fewer persons, 2 minutes if there are 6 to 14 persons, and 1 minute if there are more. The law does not permit committee action or extended discussion on any items not on the agenda, except under special circumstances. If the committee action is requested, the committee may place the matter on the future agenda. Statements that require response may be referred to staff for reply in writing. So first of all, clerk, do we have any speakers right now for public comment?
There are no requests to speak.
Okay, that makes it easy. And let's go to item number 3, which is the approval of the consent calendar and changes to the committee's agenda. Items removed from the consent calendar will be considered at the end of the regular agenda for discussion. The committee may also add items on the regular agenda to the consent calendar. Note to the public that there's no separate discussion of the calendar, consent calendar items, and the recommended actions are voted on in one motion. If the item is approved on the consent, the specific action recommended by staff is adopted. Members of the public who wish to address the committee and consent calendar items should comment under this item, and each speaker is limited to 2 minutes each. First of all, I have no change to agenda right now. Vice Chair Chavez, do you have any changes, please?
I was interested in putting the procurement management audit on consent. I just had a couple of comments about it, but we could just as easily leave it on the count, hear it, and whatever you like.
Yeah, we do have actually a few comments on the boxes that we have on the sheet. So well, let's go hear it, and we could probably move it through fairly quickly.
Alrighty, thank you.
All right, and then all right, if there's none, let's see. All right, so first of all, is there anybody who would like to speak on the consent calendar in the public?
We have no requests to speak.
All right, we'll close the public hearing, and do I have a motion to approve the agenda as is? Vice Chair Chavez? Thank you. So move, and I'll second it. And go ahead and we'll take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
All right, good. Okay, so the next item is number 4, which is receiving the management audit of the county procurement department and provide direction regarding the audit recommendations. From here to respond to any questions committee, I think we have procurement director and also the Harvey Row staff. Let's see, is Jean Clark here today? Or
I sure am, sir. Gene Clark,
great,
present.
perfect. Hi, good afternoon, Jean. Hi,
Good
thank you.
afternoon.
All right, and I think we also have Cheryl.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
All right.
I'm here.
Hello. Good
Along with, I also have the project team here, which is Julian Metcalf, who is the project manager, and Alice Herf.
Welcome,
also.
everybody. Great.
Thank you.
Do you have any introductory comments about this?
Are you, for me?
Yeah,
We
do you have
can,
anything
we
to
can
say?
either go through and have a presentation, or we can just answer your questions. I would say that, you know, we had 4 findings, 10 recommendations, and the department either agreed or partially agreed with 9 of those recommendations. So there's only one that they actually straight out disagreed with. So
Right.
I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you would like a more detailed presentation, we can also do that.
Okay, very good. Let me try to go through this quickly since there's a lot of good work already been done on this. Let me ask you, Supervisor Travis, I just would like to take on the following items as follows: to discuss item 1.1, 3.2, and 4.1, and those are the ones where the audit and the administration have some disagreements. And is there any other ones that you would like to comment on?
I was just going to comment more broadly,
Please.
Shirley, and I was going to move your matrix, if that helps.
Okay, great. So let me see. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this item?
There are currently no requests to speak.
All right. Okay. If that's the case, let me go ahead and go through these items that I mentioned. So for 1.1, I'm in the understanding of the fact that the county's procurement process is quite complex and challenging, given the different departments that ranges in size and the staffing capacity. And furthermore, the county does not operate under the centralized enterprise resource planning ERP system, and that adds only more layers of complexity and structural challenges that our procurement department has been dealing with. So in reviewing the management audit and with my staff meeting with the procurement department, I'm actually pleased to hear that the procurement department has some corrective cause of action that they're planning on taking, particularly with the utilization and implementation of the RACI model. My understanding of this model that it is not a linear responsibility chart that aims to describe participation by various roles of competing tasks or deliverables for a project or business process. And I'm hoping that this will help address some of the issues that we've been facing related to improving procurement timelines and to hold all of us accountable. So I've made the recommendation for staff to come back and provide us an update on how the RACI methodology has improved things 1 year from now. And that's for item number 1.1. For 3.2 and 4.1, I would just address them together since the attached file reflects the same recommendation. 3.2 is to do with distributing quarterly spot audits for the board contracts to all departmental fiscal officers or county staff equivalent, while 4.1 has to do with the monitoring of field purchases orders. At its essence, I believe that both recommendations speak to the point that we need to do a better job of improving quality control actions between the procurement department and the other county departments. And I believe that these biannual reports would be a good first step in the right direction. Something else I didn't pull on the attached file, but I think merits for discussion later on, is the hiring of a compliance manager under the OCCM. So I'd like to see that considering a 1.0 full-time equivalent FTE compliance manager position in the upcoming fiscal year for the monitoring and assessment of compliance with the county policy and also the state and federal laws as well. So those are my comments. Is there anything else Vice Chair Chavez would like to talk about?
Thank you. I wanted to say, Cheryl, to you and your team, and Jean, to you and your team, that it's always refreshing to see when the audit and the department being audited just really use the opportunity to focus on improvements. And I'm hopeful, and I think the way that this team handles these kinds of audits, that there's just a lot of room for brainstorming and thinking a little more innovatively about how we do this very, very important work. So first, Jean, for you and your team being so open to the audit and really working to give good feedback, I just want to say thank you, and also Cheryl, to your team. I also just wanted to highlight the work that's being done relative to the equity and contracting work, and I'd love to get an off-agenda report on the contracting steering committee. I'm really fascinated with that and want to better understand the who of it, the how of it, and how, and to see what kind of improvements come from that partnership. The the other issue that's just so exciting is the work on the sustainable purchasing policy that you're working on, which I think is so exciting, and it makes me feel very comfortable about moving forward, because the framework, I think, and Jean, I think the vision that you've set will better allow us to get the kinds of tools needed to do all the things that you're trying to do at one time, Jean. And the only thing I would ask for Jean, for you or Cheryl to be thinking about is, as it relates to the tools that will make it easier for us to partner with outside and new contractors and make it easier for people who've done business with us to work with us. I do want to make sure that you continue to help us understand what those tools are that you need, Jean, to be able to accomplish your goals.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. I think I would say a few things here. One, big thanks to Harvey Rose. I found them very open to problem solving with us. We had some very productive discussions. So kudos to them. We are all in about brainstorming and would be happy to provide a report. We've got a procurement liaison committee. We've got a countywide contracting group, and we can, they're really neat things. We problem solve our policies. We do trainings together. We get really good input. So we'll be happy to expand on that report. And with respect to sustainability, it's very exciting. We're talking to Jasneet a lot. In fact, we have a upcoming effort to have some expertise in developing specifications for green products that our small businesses and mid-sized companies can bid on, because that's kind of a frontier yet that we need the help with. So that's really exciting. And I think just moving the whole thing forward, we've got good efforts lined up, not only in paper and the things that the state of California requires in SB 1383, but also in areas like food. So really some promising things. And I can't thank you enough. I'm so appreciative about the compliance manager. I think we're all on board in setting that up. I know my boss is very supportive of it. So, it means a lot to us too, for the board to have the confidence and, quite honestly, the trust and helping us take these to new levels, because we're all in, and we just want to attack this new calendar year and make a lot of great things happen. The disparity study, I would add, is so exciting for us. That's coming to the board. That's the first comprehensive countywide disparity study, and that's going to just dive into some really good data on our LGBT and our disabled veterans and our women-owned businesses and our minority businesses. So a lot of training in that effort as well. So the audit helps. I'll be very honest. We're not opposed to taking some actions on and to listening, and we will take those seriously and track them and close those findings. So I think those are my comments, but very excited to continue all the efforts we have going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Jean. And I just want to say, echo the comments of sort of as a Chavez of the good work you guys are doing, also of Harvey Rose. When we hear about the term audit, sometimes, especially when it comes to the tax IRS, those are scary terms. But in this case, clearly the audit is something that you guys are very good at doing. I mean, we go on ongoing. It's not a negative at any juncture. This is really about working together to hope for improving, in our process moving forward. There's always room for improvement, and that's what we are identifying that we just talked about. And hey, we need somebody else to be hired to help oversee certain things that's not being covered and could do a better job. That's how we find these things. So I just want to say thank you very much, Cheryl, Jean, and your team to make this happen. And on the issue of the fair purchasing, using procurement. Procurement is a very powerful tool to help our businesses, local business, especially small businesses, as you mentioned, whether we are talking about the LGBT, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. These are all extremely important tools that we could help our local business, especially in this time of COVID and the pandemic. So I want to congratulate you on the mindfulness of making sure that we do that. And of course, outreaching, using through different languages when we have very many vendors that we know they're very good at what they do, but they might not be as good in terms of language access and finding out these opportunities. So your ability to help outreach to them will be really, really helpful. So I just want to say thank you. And I think we might have already, but yes, maybe I ask the Vice Chair for a motion to accept the audit report with the suggested FGOC actions.
Yes, with the attachments that you've added, Chair
Yes.
Lee, I'll
Yes,
make that
that's
motion.
correct. Perfect. Thank you so much. And I'll second it. And let's go ahead and take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes, and now the report has been
Thank you.
received. Thank you very much.
And go
Thank you.
procurement. Woohoo.
And I would just like to thank procurement for their cooperation and assistance throughout this process. We really appreciate it, and for the committee's kind comments.
Thank you. I see we have that energy like we were for the Niners this weekend, right, Gene?
That's right. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. All right. Let's move on to item number 5. To receive report from Behavioral Health Services Department relating to 6-month update regarding the implementation status of management audit recommendations referred from May 20th, 2021. And here to present this item, I believe, is our director for behavioral health, Sherry Terrell. Sherry, are you here?
Hi, good afternoon,
Hi,
Chairperson
good afternoon.
and Supervisor Chavez, Sherry Terrell with Behavioral Health Services Department. We have submitted our report and 6-month update on the management audit recommendations for Behavioral Health Services Department. And so we can certainly answer any questions you might have. We've provided an update to the attached template for which we've been tracking our progress along these different areas within the audit, and also provided just a couple of slides highlighting some of the completed items that we have been able to address as part of those recommendations.
Great.
And we have several folks from our team here as well, if there are any specific questions related to any of the items.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions on this item?
Yes, what I would, if it's okay, Supervisor Lee, what I'd like to do is if we could hear from the public, and then I would like to have Sherry just get the opportunity to walk through her slides.
Okay.
And then I do have a few questions.
Sure. If that's the case, should we ask Sherry, do you mind going through the slides first, and then I'll open up for public hearing? Would that work better that way?
That's great.
Okay, great. Yeah, Sherry, do you mind going through the slides to do a presentation first? Thank you.
Yes, I'm just going to ask, just clarify which of my team members would be able to pull that up for me right now.
I can pull it up. I have it.
Margaret?
Hi.
Hey, Margaret.
Okay, we can see it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'll put it in slideshow mode.
Great. So just as a reminder, as we're moving into slideshow mode, the management audit covered 9 different areas, and I'll just state those really very quickly. Section 1 was department spending and outlook update. Section 2 was slow spending of the Mental Health Services Act funds. Section 3 was whole person care recommendations. Section 4, programs to reduce emergency and crisis services use. Section 5, timely access to outpatient services. Section 6, shortage of residential care facilities and board and care facilities updates. Section 7 was related to quality and oversight of board and care facilities. Section 8, access to services on discharge from emergency and acute inpatient care. And finally, Section 9 was performance monitoring of outpatient programs. And so in the slides, we've highlighted several areas where we have been able to see some progress and success. So it's just a reminder with respect to Mental Health Services Act innovation funds, which was called out and highlighted in the audit. We have not had any of the Mental Health Services Act innovation funds be at risk of reversion. Mm-hmm. So wanted to just make sure that folks were aware that that was the case. We completed our MHSA mid-year adjustments to increase system supports, capacity, and flexibility as approved by the Board of Supervisors last month on December 14th, 2021. We have developed the Mental Health Services Act Innovation Community Mobile Response Project, now known as Trusted Response Urgent Support Team, which will be launched in spring of 2022. We've selected vendors for the MHSA Innovation Addressing Trauma and Stigma in the Vietnamese Community and African American and African Ancestry Communities projects. We've added 2.5 full-time equivalent positions to South County Behavioral Health Clinic and 1.0 full-time equivalent positions to our Narvaez Mental Health Center. We've added 200 slots to our adult and older adult outpatient and wellness and recovery medication services in fiscal year 22, and that was part of our Mental Health Services Act mid-year adjustment. For our fiscal year 23 MHSA annual update, we've added additional adult and older adult outpatient slots with more expansion to come in our fiscal year 23 MHSA mid-year plan. We've engaged in a same-day access Plan, Do, Study, Act pilot to increase service productivity. So processes and procedures can then be rolled out to other clinics. We've hired the quality management director for our behavioral health executive team. We've selected Community Health Improvement Partners, CHIP, as the provider to develop the Independent Living Empowerment Project, and that is one of our Mental Health Services Act innovation projects. We've completed our annual quality improvement work plan and audit report and posted both on our website. We've completed written procedures for quarterly audits of Barbara Aaron's Pavilion, or BAP, patient charts to identify referrals to outpatient services and notifications of case managers. We've completed the inpatient discharge manual and written procedures for quarterly audits of both BAP and EPS. We've reduced screening and referral times from 15 or more minutes to 8 to 10 minutes through an integrated screening tool implemented at our call center. And we've reviewed and aligned client outcome measures between a contract monitoring tool, which we've developed, and the performance learning measures dashboard. So those were some of the highlights that we wanted to identify as part of some of our implementation progress and successes with respect to the recommendations noted in the audit. So Margaret, I think you can stop sharing screen at this point. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Sherry. That was very helpful. I'll go and open up the public hearing. Anybody in public would like to speak on this item?
Yes, we do have a couple of speaker requests.
Yes, please. Let's have 2 minutes each, please.
Excellent. The next speaker is Lorraine Zeller. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, Supervisors Lee and Chavez and Sherry. I'm asking if you could please, supervisors, consider or reconsider your direction to administration under recommendation 7.3 of the BHSD audit. This recommendation calls for administration to consider funding proposals that would provide additional support for both residents and operators of licensed RCFs and unlicensed board and care in future updates to the MHSA spending plans. Action on this recommendation should not be limited, as methods to accomplish this goal are not limited to outcomes or lessons learned from the Independent Living Empowerment Project. Many creative solutions, apart from the goals and lessons to be learned from this project, are being utilized in other jurisdictions, such as LA County providing support through their membership association at the Licensed Board and Care, and also funding making capital improvements. The Independent Living Empowerment associations now operating in 3 California counties accomplish the same goals as those listed under the learning goals for Independent Living Empowerment Project. So there are many sources of support that can be implemented, and researching what other counties are doing. The California Behavioral Health Planning Council has a Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting on the 20th. So please redirect so that a broad array of solutions can be, we need to broaden our horizons in order to address this urgent issue. Thank you.
Next speaker is Alyssa Koff Ginsburg. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. I just want to start first with a thank you to Supervisors Chavez and Lee. You both demonstrate such passion and commitment for improving the system, and we're very grateful for that. I also want to thank the department and acknowledge and appreciate the partnership that we've had as we've started to work through some of these issues. We've made real progress, I think, in making salaries more competitive and identifying outcomes, as well as getting rid of some of the bureaucratic inflexibility that has been a challenge. I do want to echo the previous speaker to say that the unlicensed board and cares are unnecessary, or I shouldn't say, are a part of our system that some people see as their only options. And while they may not be to the standard that everyone would like them to be, there's a lot of work that could be done to make it easier, perhaps in a way of preventing homelessness for people who might need a licensed independent living facilities, but there's none available, helping them find an unlicensed one, though not ideal. I didn't say that very articulately. But in any case, we're looking forward to engaging and working with the department and everyone else on the public health emergency that clearly is very evident. Thank you.
Next speaker is Uday Kapoor. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisors Lee and Chavez, for giving the opportunity to talk about this. And as Supervisor Chavez knows, I'm very passionate about the whole issue, has been for a long time. And I'm very happy to see the passion behind it being generated with Supervisor Lee and the department and everybody. So I think we are, of course, addressing the issue of so-called bed tracking or resource tracking. And we just had a presentation by LA County that I had organized. And, Director Clara attended that, and hope we learned something from them, because it's a successful model, but this is only part of the full solution. The problems that we have of losing facilities, we need to go back to the causes. What is the reimbursement is one issue. There are no incentives for people to have those businesses. We understand that lack of staffing is one. Is that we're talking about co-occurring issues, substance abuse and mental illness, but we also need to look at other co-occurring issues, people with developmental disabilities and mental illness. So there are a lot of vulnerable people out there. So going back to those causes, but solutions through bed tracking, solutions through addressing the reimbursements, budgets, it's a much larger issue. So please include the stakeholders. NAMI is, I represent NAMI, so hopefully we are good partners with everybody. So again, thank you so much for all that you do for us, and especially for the vulnerable community. So thank you so much.
The next speaker is David Mineta. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Lee and Vice Chair Chavez. Director Terrell, thank you very much. We appreciate, again, here on behalf of both the Behavioral Contractors Association, also Momentum, but I would like to actually just echo a bit what both Lorraine, Uday, and also Elisa have said, and just sort of double down, maybe quadruple down on all of it. one thing on just to underscore the sort of crisis that we're in statewide, I think, but particularly here, I think we're acutely feeling this on the loss of beds here locally. The bed tracking system that actually is described in both, I think, in item 5 and 6. So I think we're rolling some of it up, but also just that I know the department has talked about My Avatar being part of that solution, as being the pilot on the new My Avatar system. You know, whether it's My Avatar or the system from LA, the Merlin system, I think, you know, we desperately need something to be able to know in real time what our bed situation is like, both on the licensed and on the unlicensed side, independent living side. So, you know, with advocates like Lorraine and Uday and other folks in the community, I feel like along with partnership with the county, I think we're going to close a major gap in the next few, you know, next year, few years, that'll help the community immensely. So again, thank you all. You both are champions for behavioral health, and you know, we really appreciate that. So thank you.
The next speaker is Uvish Kumar Mehta. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you very much to Board of Supervisors. I want to specifically mention about with the ongoing COVID-19 situation and some of the upgrades that is going to be made to the behavioral health, especially the mental health. As the schools are opening, what becomes more even important is that providing the mental health counselors and psychiatric counselors at the school level and the hospital level becomes more and more important. As we also know that in order to address the COVID-19 pandemic situation, even the convention centers were converted to the hospital beds. So what eventually would be a situation that is something required to address within this pandemic is to make sure that the behavioral health committee provide the sufficient government finance operation for the any upcoming unforeseen events to be addressed, whether that be a pandemic or that be any unforeseen event that could cause a surge within the paradigm of the pandemic that we are passing through. Also, to make sure that we have the right set of resources, especially the human resources available to address those situations. As we see that, you know, due to the pandemic, we see a lot of unemployment as well as a lot of jobless claims. But it's important that, you know, when we address this, those issues are also, you know, being addressed, you know, subsequently as well. Thank you.
And that concludes our request to speak.
Great, thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Would like to ask Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions now on this item?
Yes, thank you. So first of all, thank you for the progress. You have such a difficult job, and just watching how much is moving forward is just really incredible. I want to start with just the last group of the public speakers, and then I'll go back through each of the sections real quickly. But section 6 on the shortage of beds and section 7 on the quality and oversight, I see those as very linked, at least from the comments of the public. And Sherry, I was wondering if you could just give a reflection on what you just heard relative to concerns that were raised and how that does or doesn't align with the direction that you're taking the department, and recognizing that there's an audit in front of us that is made some recommendations.
Certainly. So, you know, I know through the recommendations and several conversations, there has been a significant interest in being able to actually track the available bed capacity, you know, in our system, in order to be able to, one, inform the system as to what is available for a consumer who needs to be placed in a bed, but at the same time recognizing the availability of certain areas within our levels of care, such that our system and the availability of beneficiaries to be served in the way they need, when they need to be served that way, is available. And so I think there's a couple of complex issues with respect to bed capacity. One being with respect to residential care facilities, boarding cares, et cetera, we've seen a very significant increase in closures of those beds and programs. One, because many of the vendors, as we've stated in previous reports, are essentially retiring out of the business. I think that can be attributed to several different issues. One being the reimbursement rates for those beds. And so the state rates are relatively low, and that requires counties such as ours, and even in our conversation just 2 hours ago with Los Angeles County, whereby counties are actually building onto those rates to provide an enhanced rate in order to ensure that the level of service needed is being delivered. So for example, you know, a county may add $1,000 on top of the state rate of $1,200 just to ensure that a beneficiary who has greater needs can be served. So we're struggling with one, you know, rates, two, availability of vendors who want to continue to stay in the business and provide those services. And I think, you know, understandably increasing needs. So the level of need of those that we're serving continues to increase. And we've shared with you in different meetings, even related to our wanting to increase the number of IMD beds that we have, that simply paying a general rate will not get us the one-to-one specialized care that is needed in order to have these vendors accept our clients. So that's the big scheme of it. I think with respect to the comments around unlicensed board and care facilities, we as a county and our department do not contract with unlicensed board and care homes, and therefore do not have a jurisdiction or responsibility to engage them in a way that would allow for them to provide information or data back to us related to availability of those facilities. What we are excited about, and what we've highlighted in not only our audit, but also the reports back on the Independent Living Empowerment Project, is the opportunity to work with this coalition group and the vendor to develop other strategies to assess the needs of these unlicensed facilities, to begin to strategize in ways that I think our public speakers were suggesting are necessary, because the capacity of those beds, you know, is something that we need in our county and community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Sherry, so just a couple of reflections, and then one is a request, and I'm just going to look to see if Key's on right now. Great. Yeah. So first of all, one body of work that I believed was being undertaken, which may or may not be, but I'll ask Key this question, is whether or not we had started to, as board and care homes became available, beginning to purchase them. And I think the point you raise make a lot of sense about recognizing that we have both folks who are leaving this body of work, who are retiring, and frankly, who haven't figured out a way to make this financially work. And I think we have higher need patients, that the acuity levels don't necessarily match the bed levels. So first, just to ask this question, are we trying to purchase board and care homes now?
Yes, we have tried to acquire and rehabilitate residential care facilities that were closing or were planning to close several times in the past. They haven't always worked out. I think state legislation requires notification to I think it's county behavioral health departments that of potential closures. And when those do happen, we do reach out. But so far, that line of that approach has not sort of yielded successful acquisitions.
So one thought that I have about that is that I think that, you know, we have a list through FAF of people who help us by bringing different kinds of opportunities for us to purchase medical facilities and other kinds of facilities. And I wonder if it doesn't make sense for us to have some sort of I forgot what the tool is that we use for that, but these are folks who go through a real short process to be able to get on a list with us, to be able to bring us real estate deals when they're necessary. But I wonder if we shouldn't be much more aggressive here by using that kind of tool to have more people out in the world recognizing that we could be a purchaser of those facilities when it's appropriate. Jeff, Dr. Smith, I see your hand. Otto, do you mind if I, through the chair?
Yeah, we're trying always to keep our eyes open, and we'll explore the idea of having an internal process of creating somebody to keep an eye on it. One of the big problems here is that buying the building isn't necessarily sufficient. Well, is never sufficient.
Of course.
Buying the staff is not necessarily something that's possible. So, you know, as the board knows, there's a big difference between buying real estate and buying a business. So we have to be aware of that as we're approaching them. And we'll come up with a report back to the subcommittee about what interventions we can do to try to maximize our availability. Key will do that.
Yeah, Dr. Smith, you're totally right. And that was actually the other half of my question was going to be to that issue, which I think is also raised by the speakers. And I think your point is so well taken that I think there are two issues. Like, we want to preserve that which could be considered naturally affordable housing. And I think that's what you heard some of the speakers talking about, like, how do we have these more entry-level homes for people who need them? And then I think, Sherry, your really important point is then recognizing whatever patches we put together to really support folks in the appropriate location. I think that's right. But I think, Dr. Smith, your point is really valuable about how to marry the right partners with us, business partners or nonprofit partners. And so I love the idea of taking a deeper dive into that. I'm very nervous that every day that goes by, we're losing more and more beds that we won't get back, that will turn into, you know, some other kind of, building. And so thank you for agreeing to do that. That's exactly what I think, where I think we need to be. And the reason I was asking about the folks, and Key, you probably know what kind of the real estate folks that I'm talking about, but I can't remember what the list is called. I don't know if it's a short order list or
it's part of our brokers list.
Yes, thank you. And if we could do some sort of outreach with the broker community to focus on board and care homes, I think we might find some specialists. There are people who work, for example, specifically with churches, and some that work with very particular types of properties. So I think that would be great. Thank you. I do want to ask Sherry one other question related to this, and I'll try to hold my questions around numbers for the next item. But on the issue that on the quality and oversight of board and care facilities, I'm not sure I entirely understood what the issue there is in terms of the Rain's comments about how we were limiting options through 7.3. And I wondered if you could just speak very directly to that issue.
Sure. I think part of what we're trying to do through the Independent Living Empowerment Project is to examine all options to create opportunities to engage these other board and care operators. And to the public commenter, I think there is a recognition, very importantly, that she highlighted that there has been a lot of great work in other jurisdictions. And so I think it's important for us to certainly leverage those learning opportunities and ensure that we're taking necessary steps forward and not backward in our approach. So I'm not sure if that exactly addresses your comment, Supervisor, but we do recognize that it's important to leverage lessons learned from other jurisdictions and to utilize and leverage our partnerships in whatever way can help advance this issue. And I know that there's a real strong commitment to ensuring that our focus doesn't solely remain on licensed facilities and recognizing that there needs to be able to support other facilities. And so that is certainly something that we're hoping to be able to focus in on as part of our innovation project. I'm hoping that was responsive to your question.
Yeah, I think I understand that. I'll dig more into it so I can be more refined. I just wanted to make sure I understood sort of the overarching, just where there may be a, for lack of a better word, it's not necessarily a disagreement, but just wanting us to be a little more flexible. But I understand the point you're raising too. On that front. So just a couple of other questions. Thank you for letting me dive in there, Supervisor Lee. You know, on section, and let me just go back a little and say, you know, one of the issues that we'll talk about in the next area is how we quantify the investments we're making so that we can eventually be able to say, you know, here's by topic, by service, here's how many people we're serving kind of across the board. So I'll skip that because we're going to talk about that next. You know, one thing that my staff made me aware of, and I don't think I fully appreciated the change here between whole person care and CalAIM. How does that, how do you see that impacting you, Sherry? And especially because we have a section that was really focused on improving our response to whole person care, and whole person care is going to be a thing of the past. And now we have CalAIM. So curious about where your thinking is around how we're going to be able to utilize CalAIM to address the needs of the patients that you serve.
Sure. I'm actually going to, Edwin Poon is our deputy director over our managed care area, and he's leading our work around CalAIM. So I'm actually going to have him share some of the thoughts with respect to our work around that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Supervisor Chavez. Very nice meeting you and Chairman Supervisor Lee. So happy to be here to talk a little bit about CalAIM as well too. So yes, so started actually January. The whole person care have been transitioned to the managed care side for the ECM, the enhanced care management and community support. So we have been partnering with various county divisions and departments, including OSIT, to really start looking at those, not only those individuals who are currently in whole person care, but transitioned to the managed care for continuing of those services, but also identify those who have behavioral health needs from the managed care perspective to make sure that those who are eligible for ECM and community support, and if they are actively receiving services through the county, that the Behavioral Health Services Department has the opportunity to become the ECM provider. The idea is that we, some of these individuals and beneficiaries, their care management, their enhanced care management can really be best served under Behavioral Health Services Department. And so that is really an opportunity that we're really looking for. We're working right now with Family Health Plan as well as Anthem and Kaiser to identify those who are eligible. Then we're looking at the breakdown of those individuals and where they're receiving services. And then since this is an opt-in program for ECM and community supports, we will be really asking looking to the managed care plans to make sure that these individual has the opportunity to opt in. And once they're opt in, we're working with with those plans to assign us to be their ECM providers, and then we can coordinate those services. So that's the concept.
And Edwin, if we're able to do that, does that mean that we then assign them to a nonprofit partner? So we would be the funnel for them?
Yes, that's a possibility because, as you know, that many of our services are being provided through our contracted provider, our CCP. So yes, so there are possibility that our contracted providers will become the ECM providers. We also realized that, so essentially the state, when they created ECM and community support under managed care, is a combination of two programs, not just whole person care, but there's also the health home program that's actually sits with the managed care plan for the last few years. And so it's actually a combination of those two programs into a single program called ECM and community supports under managed care. So there's some complexity to it because on the health home program, some of our contracted providers are actually directly contracted with the managed care plan for the health home. So there are some so that's why some of the analysis needs to happen as we started looking at who are qualified and making sure that we are assigning these beneficiaries to the right individuals. But conceptually speaking, the idea is that you want their current provider to become their ECM home sort of provider to coordinate care. So especially those who have primary kind of behavioral health needs. And so what we wanted to see is that they have the capacity to also assist these beneficiaries in connecting them to medical services. Because often what you see is that they may be very connected to behavioral health, but they're not so much connected to the medical services. So the concept of ECM is to allow beneficiaries to really have a more comprehensive engagement to their care from a holistic perspective.
So Edwin, let me just make this more complicated than that. But first of all, thank you. That's really helpful. And I hadn't realized the health home program was all being integrated in this too. This makes more sense. Well, it's complicated. With some of the way that the CalAIM has been explained, it's a little confusing actually, beyond even what you said in terms of how what kinds of services people will be eligible for, and then how that funding follows the person. And so one thing I just saw in the governor's projection for the new budget was also a new look at how we address conservatorships. I don't know if you followed this news, but if not, what I would just say both to you and Sherry is that I'd be very interested in understanding if the conservatorship approach that the governor is looking at fits into this new model of service, or if it's outside the model. And the reason I'm making the point is that because conservators play a role of making sure that people's needs are met, I'm just wondering if that's something that then gets two things: if it gets billed that way, and if those conservatorship if they're also a billed service.
I actually noticed that Dr. Smith has his hands raised. So before I jumped into there, I'm wondering if Dr. Smith, you have comments or.
Yeah, please, Dr. Smith, go ahead.
Well, probably Edwin knows more about this than I do, but I was intrigued by the governor's proposal in the sense that this is one of the few times in history that there have been actually mention of LPS conservatorship reform at the state level. There have been many times where a particular legislator or a particular bill was introduced to try to change some part of it or multiple parts of it, but what the governor seems to be talking about is actually complete reform, which would be a huge step forward if it's done in the right way. Behavioral health services, as you know, and as we'll talk more about when we do the Continuum of Care workshop in February, is really intimately related with LPS conservatorship law, because that's the statutory authority that gives us as providers the ability to care for individuals in a non-voluntary or semi-voluntary method or modality. And because of that, and because LPS is structured as a very intensive due process arrangement where the client pretty constantly has the right to object or have a hearing, the two go hand in hand. We can't really treat without having an effective conservatorship system, and you can't have an effective conservatorship system without the treatment. So your question about who pays for it, the proposal at this point is that CalAIM will pay for the treatment part of the process. Historically, the LPS responsibility has been the county's, and there hasn't been, a sort of fee-for-service mode of reimbursement. But I'm not quite sure what the governor's proposing in changing that, although there is some reference to changing that. So we'll just have to see what eventually gets into the budget and approved by legislature. So Edwin, did I say anything wrong?
No, not at all. I don't think I have any more to add. I think that definitely going to be interesting to see what the May revision is going to look like. But I do think that we already have experienced some changes in terms of the Department of State Hospitals. I think placements of county placed LPS conservative individuals, and I'm sure that there definitely will be potentially some ripple effect in terms of the changes of the LPS conservatorships and the demands for placements and treatments.
Thank you. I think on this one, what I would like to recommend is that we're proactive in terms of driving the discussion. And the reason is that it appears to me that our conservators play such a big role in connecting people to services that as we and other needs, that as we talk about what it means to navigate, and here's another issue, which is that if we have conservators placing people in IMD beds or other services like that, we also need these conservators to be able to go back, do oversight, and help people step down when there's a much bigger role that they play. So I would just, Dr. Smith, one thing I would recommend, and we can do it as part of this action, or maybe when we have our board discussion about how we're going to handle, how we want to address, or how mental health is being addressed now, what new directions or additional directions, and or just getting caught up, that we are really assertive with the state about the funding necessary to do this work, and also the roles, these very specific roles that people are playing. Because I think if he is interested in having conservators play a bigger role, especially for high need patients, we're talking about a very highly skilled group of people that we're going to be needing that can manage a very complex set of laws, and then dealing with families and all that. So I would like us to be as proactive as we can be on this.
Yeah, I agree. We should probably introduce that discussion during our workshop once we get the full board completely up to speed on all of the complexity of the issues. You're exactly correct, though. We do need to be advocating consistently and be in the lead.
Thank you. And then one last question, and thank you, Chairperson Lee, for indulging all of my different directions here, is that on section 8 of the report, there's not a lot of data, so it was really hard for me to understand. Once the discharge manuals be completed and we have kind of our processes underway, will we have the ability to understand what the disposition of each client is after they leave EPS? And in two sections. One is they leave EPS and they have a successful outcome. They leave EPS and they don't. They come back. Like, will we have the ability to track that and then hopefully make decisions that are relative to that, to those outcomes?
I'm gonna look to, well, Edwin, I think you can address the discharge manual, and then Margaret, perhaps you want to just talk a little bit more about the work that's been done with respect to individuals that may be leaving EPS and how their care and outcomes are tracked.
Sure. And I see that Curtis is also on the call. So Curtis, please feel free to jump in too, because I think in terms of the manual, it's been the partnerships between the department as well as the hospital system with Curtis and his team to make sure that when we review the manual, that we're really addressing some of the gaps and the questions that have raised in the past in terms of how we really coordinate care when a beneficiary is at EPS or even leaving BAP. So a couple things that we really highlight was that we really recognize that the timing is of essence, especially when someone is at EPS. And it's really critical that we identify sort of like the follow-up if the person is not going to be transitioned to the inpatient, but is being discharged or being follow-up at the community level. How do we engage? How do we ensure that there is an appointment that is given to the individual and provide the necessary support? So I think the manual really talks about how we can do that. And so that was kind of the main focus of us, making sure that we have a proper documentation to show that how we really coordinate care both at the EPS and BAP. I'm going to pause here to see if Curtis, you have additional kind of inputs on this one.
Sure, I'm happy to weigh in. Good afternoon, supervisors. Curtis Ohashi from Valley Medical Center. EPS and BAP, although they are part of the system of care, I like to think of them also as outcome indicators for our outpatient program. So to answer your question, Supervisor Chavez, both at the individual patient level and sort of globally, the percent of recidivism to BAP and EPS is really an indicator of how successful those outpatient programs are. And we can make determinations on an individual level in terms of altering treatment plans, or even at a global level to make adjustments of system in terms of the system of care by looking at those recidivism rates.
And so when will we be able to start to collect that, or like when could that start to be reported out to us?
We are trying to automate that report through the HealthLink EMR. Currently, the recidivism is done on a manual audit. If we're able to effectively generate reports out of HealthLink, then we'll be able to do 100% of sampling as opposed to just a proportion of the sample.
And when will that occur, Curtis?
I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, excellent. Oh, good. Well, I'll look forward to that, because I think that you're exactly right and very on point. That was very helpful. Just on that front, Curtis, this may be a question for the next item, but when will we know how many inpatient beds, IMD beds, and crisis residential beds when will we know what we need? And specifically, I mean, irrespective of what we're contracting for right now, but when will we know what we need by yeah.
I mean, I think we could give a fairly good present state need, but in order to project what the future needs are, there are a number of other initiatives like AOT, the potential reform of LPS that may really impact where patients are discharged to. And that becomes a little bit more of a complex question. But I think for present state, in terms of the amount of patients that are currently in BAP awaiting either a state hospital or IMD bed, we could probably make a pretty good projection now.
And then, so we added, how many beds got added? I know I requested 40, but I don't think we got 40. So do you know?
We added 30.
30, Margaret? And
Yeah.
are they all filled already?
Yes.
So we now know we need more.
Yes.
So the question then is, do we know how many more we need?
So right now there's approximately, I won't give an exact number, but I want to say there's probably 28 patients now in BAP that are there on administrative status that are just waiting for IMD capacity, or essentially it's a 1 in and 1 out proposition. So for each patient that gets discharged, we can put 1 in. The difficulty for us in terms of Santa Clara County is the way that they manage the patient wait list is that all of the counties get in line. It is kind of a first come, first serve in that way. So even if a Santa Clara County resident or patient gets discharged from an IMD, it doesn't mean we have the first right to put another patient in that bed. That's why the turn of the patients is so slow, and it actually takes several months sometimes for a bed to become available.
You know, we ought to think a little bit about how to expand that service without getting into that queue, because it doesn't make sense for us to keep expanding them if we're not able to use them. So maybe Dr. Smith, I don't know if he's still on. I think he might have had to drop off, but perhaps for our discussion when we have our, when we have our group meeting, our retreat day where we're talking about behavioral health, if this question could be just raised, because I do think that it genuinely doesn't, there's less incentive for each county to make those investments. Now, if somebody's in an IMD bed from another county, does that county pay for it? Okay, so that's good for us to know, because what would be also good to know is of the beds we expanded, to how many of those have our local residents in them?
They all have to be Santa Clara County residents to access those beds.
Oh, Curtis, maybe I misunderstood what you just said.
No, what Curtis is referencing is in the IMD facilities, an IMD may have up to 90 beds, but Santa Clara County only has about 50 of those beds. So the remaining 40 beds, other counties have those beds. And so that's where that system of rotation comes into play. So for instance, if a bed becomes available for say Ventura County, then that person in Ventura who's waiting gets that bed from, so that's how the rotation is.
Yeah, there's no really, the least block of beds, I think used to occur maybe 15 or 20 years ago, but it's really a first come, first served basis. So when we put a patient in the queue for a particular IMD, they get in line with all of the other counties' patients that they're referring to that particular IMD as well. So the next discharge really goes to the next patient in line and not necessarily a Santa Clara County resident.
Because the contracts are not set up as dedicated beds. Right.
I see. Yeah,
they don't technically reserve the bed, the actual physical bed for us.
Yeah.
They won't leave it empty.
Yeah.
So I think, let's tackle that, because I think we know based on, if we have 28 people who are waiting for a bed who are in BAP now, and we have any number of people that we can just see in our community who are really in need of these very particular services, that would be helpful to dive into, but we can do that at the next meeting. Supervisor Lee, thank you. I could do this all day. I will stop, and I want to thank the staff very much for the thoughtful feedback. I learned a great deal.
First of all, Supervisor Chavez, I thank you for these very in-depth questions. The mystery of IMD beds, I'm just getting to learn about, and it's still not clear to me either. So I'm just asking to get a quick tutoring on that very issue myself, of how important it really is. Well, first of all, I do want to say to Sherry and her team for making great progress on these implementation, many of these audit recommendations. And I would like to go by item on the matrix a little bit to ask a couple of questions. On matrix item number 2.1, I would like to ask the administration to come back on the spending levels for each of the MHSA component at the following report back to the FGOC. On matrix item number 5.1, at the September Health and Hospital Committee meeting, I think, Sherry, you mentioned there were 600 open clinical spots that were to be hired. How are we doing in terms of hiring people to fill those spots?
Yeah, so Supervisor, I had referenced that one of our contract providers had done an analysis of vacant clinical codes within a 25-mile radius of their agency. And so I think, we're continuing to experience, understandably, the professional shortage, not only here in our county, but across the state. We've since implemented several strategies, which we're looking at to address both short-term, medium-term, and long-term concerns related to staffing. So just some of the immediate actions that we're taking are looking at rate adjustments, as well as flexibilities in our current agreements that would allow for, retention of staff, and also for our beneficiaries to be served much more effectively and efficiently. But with respect to specifically moving the needle around those 600 vacancies, I'm not sure. I think it continues to be a very serious challenge for our system of care.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that's why that goes along with the mental health crisis declaration that was passed by the board earlier in the week. Yeah. On this very issue of hiring people. Thank you. On matrix item 6.1, if you could provide us if there's any status update on the receipt of the award.
Sure. We are still awaiting a response from the Department of Healthcare Services with respect to approval of our mental health block grant. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we participated, as other public commenters stated today, on a webinar with Los Angeles County on their county's bed registry and learned quite a lot of really good information. I think that'll be helpful in how we proceed to take action on that area.
Right. So I think we're trying to look at using the block grant to help develop the bed registry for the systems. I think there was mention earlier in the public comment section. There's the My Avatar is one way, and then the other one is the one that LA is using. What was the name again? I'm sorry.
It's a Merlin system.
The Merlin system that LA uses, and I think we did some costing of it for approximately like $300,000 or something like that. So, and I know there's some discussion that NetSmart is doing some tracking of the slot and bed availability right now, but it does not seem to offer real-time tracking, which apparently is, as we have learned, is something that's very, very important. Do you see, based on the learning we have had right now, is this something that we look like we will be moving forward in terms of implementing?
Well, as you stated, when we implemented NetSmart as our electronic medical or electronic health record, the platform was really intended to address contracted specialty mental health services and substance use treatment services, and kind of the idea of tracking residential care facilities was really outside the scope of NetSmart. we're looking at options, and I think the conversation that we've had today with LA County has really helped illuminate just other options that might be available to us.
Right. So yeah, if you could maybe give us a report back, maybe off agenda, just to see how that one's going. Certainly would like to, because I hear certainly a chorus of need from our partners and CBOs of how important this would be. So assuming this is something that could happen, I would love to hear back from you. Hopefully we can get that real-time tracking in place sooner than later. On 7.3, excuse me, let's go back to 7.2 first. For the CHIPS performance, the outcome achieved in the lessons that's gleamed over the time after ILEP implementation. Can you give us maybe some estimated timeline of that?
Sure. So the Independent Living Empowerment Project is a 2-year project. But our department will observe performance and outcomes annually. Currently, the selected vendor contract is under negotiation with an estimated start date of April 1st, 2022. And based on the start date, we would be reviewing performance, outcomes achieved, and lessons learned during summer of 23 and 24 with a final assessment completed of the 2-year project by fall of 2024.
24, okay. So in the meantime, in terms of accessing the need related to the unlicensed board and care facilities, what do you think we can do at this point?
Yeah, so while we do not hold a contract with our unlicensed board and care homes, and as I stated previously, it doesn't allow us jurisdiction over those operations of those facilities. We are looking to collaborate with Independent Living Coalition Group and the vendor to discuss other strategies to assess the needs of unlicensed facilities. So I think that'll be a focus for us in this project.
Good, and of course we're not alone, right? I've always said that I'm shameless about copying good ideas from others when it comes to best practices, and looks like there's some good lessons learned we can learn from the other counties of how they work with their unlicensed or board and care facilities. So hopefully we could adopt some of those practices as well from your review on those in the future. Would that work?
Yes.
Yeah, great. On item 8.1, about this inpatient discharge manual, is that now completed or is it going to be implemented soon?
Yes, it was completed last month in December.
Okay, and it's and those procedures has now been implemented already, right?
Yes, and so the manual will be made available to all of our facilities on our website by the end of the month.
By the end of January, okay.
Yes.
Would there be any type of training going to be provided regarding that?
We're not going to provide direct training. However, we are available, once provider agencies have been able to review those to be able to provide any consultation or answer any questions that may come up.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that's all the questions I have. And I would like to ask Supervisor Chavez, is there a motion to accept the report and recommendation provided by the committee today?
So moved.
I'll second it. And go ahead and take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
And now the report has been received. Thank you very much, Sherry, and your team for the good work. All right, let's see. Now moving to the next item, item number 6. It's also receiving report from Behavioral Health Service Department relating to discussions with providers regarding challenges and short-term solutions to tally the daily bed capacity. And this is a referral back from September 21st, 2021. And again, presenting this is Sherry.
Great. Again, good afternoon. We actually have Brian Wagner, our Director of Analytics and Reporting with Behavioral Health, who will be reporting out on this item.
Great.
Thank you, Sherry. Good afternoon. So here, can you see my screen? Is it presenting okay?
Yes, we can see it fine. Thank you.
So it's just a brief check-in report regarding some of the items that have been very much a part of previous conversations that we've had today. regarding bed tracking in our system, and this is in specific regard to the NetSmart solution. So the check-in was about going back out to our providers, our BHCA meeting, and the collection of providers that we have there to test the waters and see if we could get some more live data, daily data entered into the system in an interim solution while we're continuing to move forward with our NetSmart MyAvatar implementation. So first, wanted to just review the examples of the current capacity tracking. This is what we have in place and have had for some time. Outpatient services largely being updated on a weekly basis through Google Sheets, so that all of our specialty mental health outpatient and SUTS services can be, the providers can provide the capacity information that they have, and the call center in making the referrals can go ahead and see that information to help determine where to make those referrals to. So that is weekly, that is ongoing. We have our inpatient and residential folks that we've heard some from today who do collect their information on a daily basis and aggregate and keep track of their information there. And then on the criminal justice side of things, capacity reporting done weekly as well. I should put this in the screen share mode, I apologize. So in terms of our NetSmart capacity tracking, the big news is that on December 1st, we did launch our pilot agency in terms of the MyAvatar integration, the claims platform that goes across, that bridges from our system, our MyAvatar system, across to their system. That was Momentum for Health. And we've been working daily for the past couple of months, for the past 2 months through December and certainly into January, to make sure that that application programming interface, the API, is functioning correctly. This month, we're working on the billing aspects of those things. And then we have a cadence, a scheduled go live cadence set throughout the rest of 22, wherein we are intending to bring on both the people that will be connecting via the portal, as well as the Provider Connect Enterprise, the direct connection, to attempt to complete all of our CCP's integration into our systems, so that that data can be coming over on a daily basis. At the end of that period of time, there will be all of our contracted agency information available more real time to behavioral health. And at that time, the reports and dashboards that we would be able to make in terms of current censuses and capacities would be greatly enhanced, and all of the contract agencies that we are referring to would then have information in the system. So we did take this to consultation with Behavioral Health Contractors Association and discussed options, considered various ideas with that group in terms of what interim solutions we could put in place, what other options there were, including moving the daily tracking on the Google Sheet that we currently have tracking capacity from weekly to daily, as well as while we continue to work on our longer term NetSmart solution being rolled out throughout the rest of the year in 22. And so we wanted to present the feedback. The group generally did very much understand the need for daily capacity tracking, or more real-time, more live capacity tracking. And sort of commensurate with much of the other discussions around certainly the hiring challenges that the system is having right now, the needs for staffing that was referenced as a pretty significant barrier to changing and or increasing the capacity tracking and reporting processes that are in place right now. So the general reports and understanding from BHCA is that staff are that their programs are often understaffed, the staff are stretched. And there was a concern that additional tasks, additional reporting may take away from the limited amount of staff of service provision time that is available, that there may be a requirement to hire more staff in order to increase the capacity tracking at this time. And so essentially that is the report out, the feedback that we received after having consulted with BHCA around that. So our intention at this time is to continue to move forward with our NetSmart implementation plans, continue to integrate more and more of our CCPs in the various different ways that they connect to My Avatar rolling forward, and continue to develop the reports that are required for census and evaluating capacity with our contracted agencies as we move forward. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions that I can address.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian and Sherry, for the information. So I would like to say if there's anybody in the public that would like to speak on this item.
We do have a couple of speakers.
Okay, great. Let's open it up for 2 minutes each, please. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ubish Kumar Mehta. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you very much. I wanted to specifically mention about the analytics and the data platform. What becomes more and more important on a day-to-day basis from a technology and a platform perspective is that most of the business analysis and tracking data, they do evaluate most of the information that has been the data that has been entered. However, what information that gets lacked is that it becomes proprietary to the data that has been provided to the system only. However, when any real-time analysis that is being tracked or being required, what the platform is to be enabled with is the right set of a governance compliance. So would be the case that nowadays, when we are talking about business analysis for COVID-19 pandemic tracking data on a day-to-day basis to be updated, what becomes more important is not just the data, but what data is being driven with the information that is being provided, and how that information is required to be updated on a daily basis. Not all the information which is being tracked from demographic to a geographic location perspective, or from a specific data points to a data points perspective, that require right set of a modeling. In particular, business analysis tool as well, there are different technological and transformation models out there which allows the real-time data to reflect, and as well as those real-time data is based upon the feeds, and as well as the number of population and the data that is total number of population and inputs and outputs that's been entered there. So the real-time analysis would become equally important with the business analysis and the data matrices. And that is the transformative model nowadays ongoing with the business analytics. Thank you very much for your consideration comments.
Next speaker is Alyssa Koff Ginsburg. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this really important issue. I want to share that among BHCA providers, the vast majority of beds are actually slots and outpatient slots. So all of the residential providers within BHCA, as was noted in the presentation, report daily on their capacity. For outpatient, there is no bed, so it doesn't change as quickly. So if on a Monday, an agency receives 10 referrals, they start calling those referrals. They don't know on Tuesday how many are going to convert. So that number may not change as quickly. So that's why currently it's weekly. And to do a lot more reporting daily would take a lot of work, because you're coordinating from all the different people that were given referrals to try to contact. Second, I just want to share, the reasons on there, which you've heard before, regarding staff shortages and all those and all the challenges that we're facing right now. I think if there was a feeling that it would have an impact on the number of referrals, there'd be more desire to jump through hoops to try, and that's not the right word, to really struggle to bring more into doing it. But right now, just like you see a crisis, say at an emergency room, a provider may only be able to take 5 clients, they think, but they get 10 because it's those 10 that really need the service. And that's why we're feeling that this is not the time to.
Next speaker is Uday Kapoor. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. It's good to see the presentation from Ryan. Ryan, it's nice that you attended the presentation by LA County today. As you know that the need to have real-time data by the users necessitates that the case managers, providers update that on a daily basis. So we have current data. And the public facing part, they don't have that yet, although they will have that capability. As you know that a lot of the families are anxious to find out what resources exist, what kind of facilities exist, and what kind of care is provided. So that kind of information would be useful. In our warm line at NAMI, we get a lot of inquiries. People in crisis, they want to know where can they go? What should they do? So having that capability in the future would be nice. And currently LA County doesn't have it, but they can institute that. Their tool is based on the Microsoft technology, and with APIs, you can have interoperability with EHRs and multiple cases. So if there's a possibility to use a current solution like that with whatever we have and make it interoperable, we can have a solution quickly. So this is just a thought that I had. Just wanted to recommend that. Thank you very much.
And that concludes our request to speak.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. And Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions on this item, please?
Yes, and I'll just say that this is one item that's been very pressing to me for years. And one, you know, Elisa, I was listening to you very carefully, and also Uday to you. I will say that I find one of the biggest challenges we have in determining how to spend money, not having enough information to know what part of the system is most in need of more resources. And so part of the reason I've been so interested in the tracking is for that reason. How long do people have to wait to get connected to services? What's the wait times for all of these services? And in part, when people call our offices, when they have challenges with access, most often the access problem isn't that they won't eventually get access, it's how long does it take to get a particular service. In particular, I'm concerned about this as it relates, and my question was really to drill down on inpatient and residential programs, because I, along with Dr. Smith and others, went to go visit the my goodness, I think we call it the recovery center at the reentry center. And when speaking to the person whose job it is to connect people to services, she had a list of phone numbers in front of her. She might have had a computer monitor, but she used a list of phone numbers to begin calling when somebody there was looking for an inpatient service. And what she told me is that most, because there's no way for her to know, that she calls this list, and if she can, she gets the person connected, and if she can't, they try to figure out a way to connect back with that person, to try to get them connected to these really important services. So, and then I think, Elisa, I really appreciate the points you raise. I have a hard time understanding what the additional workload is if as part of the work that you're doing, you are giving people appointments. And And so I don't think this should be a whole set of new work. I think it should actually be really deeply integrated into the work that we're doing now. So, and I feel like there's so much time wasted. I mean, thinking about staff time wasted for staff trying to connect people to services. So from a workflow perspective, this is even difficult for me to understand. But so I want to learn more from you, Elisa, about that. So Brian, just so I may want to make sure I understand this, as it relates to inpatient and residential programs, could you just delineate that timeline for me about when we'll be able to track that versus the outpatient, if we could separate them?
Yeah, and Margaret, if you have more information about any of our residential or inpatient facilities that will be on My Avatar and those plans, that would be helpful as well. So My Avatar is meant to connect with our contracted agencies, and there's a large section of that, as was mentioned, that is outpatient. So some of the billing of our contracted agencies do come for the inpatient and residential section, the 24-hour care that Margaret oversees, is coming through. So there are census reports available now that have those programs. And then the rollout plan is agency by agency. So essentially those are grouped together. So I would have to delineate between which ones are inpatient and which ones are outpatient to know precisely which ones are in what order in that rollout plan. But we have a large majority of our census information coming in through for 24-hour care. And then there are other programs that are not connected into My Avatar, nor is there a design or plan to. So Curtis's programs, BAP and EPS, are not sunk up with My Avatar. They're not contracted agencies that will implement with My Avatar. I hope that helps get us in the right.
I'm sorry, Bill. I'm sorry, Brian. You were saying that won't connect to My Avatar?
They're not our contracted agencies that are on the list of planned integrations, and we don't. So correct. That is correct.
And they're not on the list because they're not contract agencies to us, or they are.
There are agencies. They're under Curtis's purview, right? So
they're under HealthLink, which is the other EHR platform that is used by Valley Medical Center.
So if I could offer something on the bed tracking topic, there's a gentleman that works for 24-hour care, which is part of Margaret's shop. And he generates a truncated, essentially daily bed tracking report that's used primarily for BAP and EPS to place patients. So this doesn't include all of the outpatient slots that were referred to earlier. These are just typically places where EPS in particular will discharge to. So facilities contained on that daily report now include 3 other acute care hospitals, the shelters, residential treatment facilities, board and cares, skilled nursing facilities, and the IMDs. They track how many beds are open by gender, because typically they have semi-private rooms, so you have to know which gender space is open in order to refer a client to.
Yeah, so that census that Curtis is referencing, the staff person actually makes calls, right, to the folks. So it's different from what Brian is doing in terms of the Avatar. So in Avatar, we are reporting the census in terms of number of people in each of our contracted beds. And that's what's coming over in Avatar. But in terms of the daily census as to which provider has vacancies, then those are, it's a staff person who's making those calls every morning. And then there's some providers who know to report the census every morning. So those are 2 different tracks that are taking place at this time.
Do you all, I mean, just to ask a broad question, to me, I think the board is so interested in behavioral health and mental health, more so than I think I've seen since maybe the last time was when Zoe and Jim Bell were here. And this is an enterprise that we spend over $600 million a year within our behavioral health services. And I'm not even sure that's all of it, because Curtis, I'm not even sure that counts what ends up in the medical side. I think this is just in Sherry's shop. So let's round that up to say 800 million. And we don't have a single transparent mechanism for us to know the strain on our resources. For example, I now know we have how many people we have that are waiting in BAP for IMD beds, but that doesn't really count the number of people who are out in the world who need our services. And so I am concerned that with such a large investment, we are not concretely able to track availability and usage in one place. Even, and I'll say this, Curtis, for you and Sherry, if just to not be able to see all of that on a daily basis, to me is of huge concern. And frankly, for our partners not to be able to connect people to services, because part of how we make it smooth for people to move up if they need more services or move back down is having this really meaningful communication that's pretty fast and very, very available, you know. And I think when you just said first come, first serve, I was like, well, I want to be in, I want us to be there. So what I would want to recommend is that in partnership with our providers, and especially just given what a huge group of our providers, and on the medical side within behavioral health, but also including all the hospital components, that we come back with a plan to get us to transparency across the system, recognizing that we have all of these very complex back of house problems to try to address. And what I would want to see is if we can engage TSS in helping us solve the problem. Because I think the point that Elisa was raising, I just want to acknowledge, is the intent here isn't to create busy work. The intent is that we're able to use the resources we have so effectively that it makes it easier for us to expand resources, so we're not wasting them. Because and I'm not saying we are having waste. I literally don't know. I don't know what part of the system has the toughest component to it. But I mean, is the most impacted. But even if what we were able to do was focus on the inpatient and residential programs, along with Curtis, the programs that you have where we have high need patients, that would be a move forward. The reason, in fact, the discussion we just had that Supervisor Lee raised around the beds, whether they're licensed or not, the reason we're interested in that is that there is public dollars being spent and we're not able to properly assess how many people need the services, where they're going, and therefore even what to advocate for. So I know I'm making something extremely complex seem simple, but if we're paying anybody for anything, they should be able to tell us how many of those anythings are being utilized on any given day, how long the wait list is, and we should have our own recovery center at the reentry center, not calling phone numbers randomly down a list to get a service for a person who's waiting before they leave, or worse, we run out of time and we boot them out. We kick them out and then we try to find them again. I mean, it's just like, we got to, you know. I'm literally never like this. I'm speechless, kind of. But what do you think is TSS? I'm sure you're already trying that, but could we prioritize that for you? Do you recognize this as a priority also? Are we making a mountain out of a molehill? I'm really open to all three of those, because this is something I've been raising for years. So I feel like maybe I'm not asking the question properly, or I'm not prioritizing this properly.
take a first pass at your comments. I think I hear what you're saying, and I do think what you've raised is important because one, just to, I guess, to simplify it, it impacts client care and the ability of someone who needs a service to receive it in a timely way, and having a system that's informed about the availability of that service such that the individual or beneficiary is not caught up in any type of delay in any way, shape, or form. So I understand that. I think it is complex and complicated. However, I do like the idea of bringing in TSS. We've, engaged them in many projects, and as what Brian shared with respect to NetSmart, they're very involved, in supporting us around that implementation. So I think perhaps initiating a conversation, Curtis and I can certainly collaborate around that and bring in the partners and be able to come back around this. But Curtis, I'll turn to you and see what your thoughts are as well.
Well, I'm in full alignment with all your comments. And in fact, when I first got here, I was surprised because at EPS, they were doing the same process that you described in reentry for every single patient multiple times a day. And I thought the investment in a bed tracking board makes people's lives easier. And I think indeed it has. I could see the need for a broader audience to have access to the report. And I would like to see it, to see if we can leverage technology so it's not so much of a manual process as it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's helpful. Thank you, Supervisor Lee, and Brian and Margaret. Thank you. I recognize that, what you do is really difficult, and it's so complicated by billing and all the different partners we have. I think we have to prioritize this because of the volume of money we're spending and because of the feedback we're getting, that we have folks from the public saying, we don't see it. And we have to be able to say, here's what we're accomplishing that you don't see. So trust that we're working really, really hard and fast. And here's what's still left. And we know that, like, we're going to work with you to get this, to address the needs of this community. So I think when we take a motion, I would like us to move that through Dr. Smith, we ask TSS to prioritize this project and work with Sherry and Curtis and their teams to create an effective, useful, not overly burdensome process so that our nonprofit partners and our service providers are able to get this data and make that data available to all of our partners so that they can use it, and to the board so the board understands and the public understand what we're spending their money on. Thank you. That was really helpful. I appreciated the comments. And Elisa, I will follow up with you, I'm sure. Chairperson Lee.
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez. I certainly agree. And it's interesting enough to discuss all this because as much as we're talking about mental health, the issue we're dealing with here is not really mental health. This is about logistics, right? We're talking about what's available, what's not, where the beds are. And my prior life, as some might have known, I was in the Navy as a logistics officer. I was tracking airplane parts around the world, where those parts would be, whether it's in Cherry Point, North Carolina, whether it's an aircraft carrier floating on the Persian Gulf, or is it back in Coronado Island in San Diego. And there's this concept called a total asset visibility, is to look at where everything is so that we know where to find the stuff and where to move it to. And it kind of reminds me of what we're trying to solve. A problem here is there are a lot of data, right? There's a segregated in where the stovepipe system in different places. And that in order to serve our constituencies of all these needs, they really need to be accessible in one place so people could see them. And more people should be able to access them all simultaneously so that we know where the need is and where we could place them quickly. And certainly, going through a list of phone numbers to call is something that should be obsolete, 10, 20 years ago. So I fully support what Supervisor Chavez, your concern is. And I really do think that this is a technical issue. It really shouldn't be that complex to do. And I really do think that needs to be looked at. And I do have some follow-up questions on this is, We did talk about the LA County's system with this Merlin. So I really would like to get that off agenda report later on, if I could, how they work their bed tracking. And in terms of the functionality comparison between NetSmart, the tracking system, I would like to take a look of the differences, like how they do data collected, the search criteria and functions, levels of system access, security, ability to collect information on unlicensed care facilities, on availability on the public-facing portal, and the summary of some advantages and disadvantages to compare on both of these. And I do think that these type of information will be a good precursor to hopefully get to the point where Supervisor Chavez is suggesting, so that we could get to a point that we could have a complete visibility on the entire system that we're trying to provide in all these different services and appointments or bed availability. Does that make sense, Sherry?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. One other question I have is, we talk about the 37 county contracted providers and their report in the presentation. Are these the 37 providers that includes only all the licensed residential care facilities here in the county?
No, not all of them. The 37 providers, there are few residential care facilities in that list of 37 that we're moving forward with implementation on My Avatar. There are contracted residential care facilities that are billing through My Avatar already, and there are non-contracted residential care facilities, licensed residential care facilities that wouldn't touch the system at all because they're non-contracted.
Okay, all right, got it. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have for now. If there's no further questions, I'll look for a motion to accept the report and all the comments incorporated. Supervisor Chavez?
Thank you. I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. And let's take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Now that the report's been received, let's see, I believe we have come to the last item of the agenda today, to adjournment. And with that, I would like to thank everybody for attending this meeting. And it's now adjourned to actually only 6 days away, Thursday, January 20th, at 2 p.m. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Everyone have a good day. Thanks all for your
Have a
work.
good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Recording stopped.